Welcome to Bookish, Meet the Author. And I am here this morning with Adora Winquist. She is the author of, and I just wrote it down, so I wouldn't forget, I'm already fumbling for it, Detox Nourish Activate, Plant and Vibrational Medicine for Energy, Mood, and Love. And by the way, I'm Ebony Haywood, and this show is created by Clarissa Burt, CEO and founder of Limelight. So, Adora Winquist, welcome. How are you?
I am wonderful, Ebony. Thank you so much for having me. I love Clarissa's work.
Yes, I am very excited to talk to you about this book because I love anything that has to do with energy and healing. And so this is going to be a great conversation. So, Adora, why don't we start off by maybe telling us what inspired you to write this book, Detox Nourish Activate?
Sure, absolutely. Well, this book, also, I want to just acknowledge that it is co-authored with my ally with the plants, Dr. Lulu Shemek, who is a naturopathic physician. And when we were working together a number of years ago, we started to see these patterns with clients and patients, right? And so what happens when we have the same reoccurring patterns that show up in our lives, right? Despite our best efforts, despite our best intentions, despite good nutrition, despite going for a weekly massage, or despite even seeking out many different forms of healing and therapy, different therapeutics and interventions along the way. Why do we have the same patterns that keep showing up in ways that we don't necessarily want them to, right? And we know when they show up either in our bank account or in our primary relationships or in our health with acute or chronic disease patterns, or at the office, right? In our work, whether we're entrepreneurs or whether we're working out in some other capacity or corporate America, right? We have patterns that tend to keep popping up again and again and again. And so essentially, it brought me to look more deeply into not only my healing journey, right? Over 25 years as a healer, as an entrepreneur, as an essential oil formulator, and then also looking at the thousands of clients that I've worked with in the past to see like where are these threads of connectivity? And so then really coming into the aspect of Detox Nourish Activate, what that means to be able to heal our traumas, because we've all experienced some degree of adversity in our life, right? And that adversity, whether we've experienced it as a very young child, or early adolescence or early in adulthood, anything that is left unresolved within us continues to project reality and to magnetize experiences, even ones that we don't necessarily want, until it's transmuted, transformed, healed, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when
So
you
from
talk
that
about patterns,
perspective,
Adora,
yeah.
I just want to clarify something for listeners. When you talk about reoccurring patterns in our lives, do you mean how we will find ourselves in very similar situations time and time again?
Exactly. It could be like, gee, this is a relatively new relationship that I'm in, and my partner seemed so amazing in the beginning, but why am I starting to experience the same pattern that I had with my last relationship? Right?
Right. Yeah.
Or why do I have these inconsistencies in my financial resources? Right?
Mhm.
I get some money and then suddenly I'm back down to being panicked and in survival mode.
Mhm.
Or why do I have this health crisis that keeps showing up in different ways? Why do I feel so anxious? Why do I feel depressed? Why do I feel disconnected? And we can look at this in so many different areas. Or I'm in a new job, right? I'm in a new job in a new company, but I'm starting to have the same problems that I had with my previous boss or coworkers at my last job and the 3 jobs before that. What's happening here? Right? So this is why we created this revolutionary guide to go into all of the aspects of our past experiences to heal, to transform, and then to illuminate a much healthier version of ourselves, to really embody that, and not just physically, but emotionally, mentally, and spiritually as well. So we chose three specific areas: plant and vibrational medicine for energy, mood, and love. But we did that very purposely, right? Energy connects into the adrenal system, which connects into our connection to the earth, right? And it's every belief system that we have around being connected, being grounded, being on the planet, being in our bodies, being in our family of origin, like some very core tribal aspects to our existence, right? And this is where adrenal system, as we know, connects with our energy. And how many of us are walking around right now with some degree of adrenal fatigue, right? So many of us. And then if we look at mood, well, mood, we come in and view the brain and the nervous system. And of course, our crown connection, our connection to divine mind or the collective consciousness, cosmic consciousness. We all view it in many different ways. So it's more than just optimizing brain function and peak performance, but it's also, where is our connection to spirit, to our spirituality, in whatever way we term that? Because we're not just physical beings, right? We're multifaceted, we're multidimensional: physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. And so all of these needs have to be met for us to live our life fully, to live our best life, and to really receive that sense of fulfillment that we long for. And of course, when we consider love, we're coming into the heart, right? Not just from an organ perspective, the cardiovascular system, but from an emotional and psycho-spiritual perspective, because this is the source of all of our relationships, right? And so our deep longings to experience intimacy, to be able to give love, but also to receive it. Because how many of us are better at caretaking than receiving?
Mhm,
Right? It's so
mhm,
much easier to give than to receive, because to receive, we have to open our hearts, right? And that can be uncomfortable when we've been hurt in the past. And we
mhm.
all carry some degree of heartache or heartbreak from grief, loss, betrayal, all of these past experiences. So to live life with our heart open and fully, we have to let go of the past, right? The pain of the past. We have to nurture ourselves to be able to activate the fullness of our vital life force. And this is where the Detox Nourish Activate comes in, because it's a play on words, right? Because our book is all about how we can heal at the DNA level.
Mhm.
But also, to detox, nourish, activate means we're letting go of the things that we no longer need in the detox phase. We're nourishing ourselves with healthy self-care practices, self-acceptance, self-love, self-forgiveness, and compassion. And that's when we can activate, right, our vital life force and live the life that we were born to live.
Mhm, mhm. And in the plant and the vibrational medicine, is the plant
Yes.
herbs?
Well, this is a great question. So what we have done is come up with what we call the Freedom Photon Wheel, that has 11 different alchemical interventions. So you can determine exactly what is best for you, right? What are the ways that you are going to be able to work with these tools and techniques to curate your own path of self-mastery? So it includes herbs, it includes essential oils, it includes crystals, meditation, flower and gem essences, nutrition, right? All of these different aspects of being, along with psycho-spiritual skills and the ability to dive deeply and honestly and authentically into our truth.
Mhm.
So in the book, you'll find not only these wonderful discovery dives to look back, not at just this moment of life, but your entire past, to see where you're being called to bring your healing, your attention, and your intention. Because where our intention goes, our energy flows,
Mhm, mhm.
right?
Yeah.
So this book is filled with recipes and meditations and all sorts of ways that you can at home have practical, accessible tools to transform your and elevate your life right here, right now, right? Because
Right.
there's no, why wait any longer?
Yeah, so let's talk about that. So how can we transform our lives in practical and accessible ways?
So this is a great question. So when we think about some of the aspects of who we are, and I'm for a moment, I'm going to go back in time. I'm going to go for a bird's eye view to consider what it means to heal at the DNA level. Because if you think about your physicality, right, you have trillions of cells within your body. Each one of those cells is imprinted with your genetic code, your DNA, right? And so our DNA is not just containing every experience that we've ever had in our lives since the moment of conception, which it does, right? Every physical experience, mental, emotional, and spiritual is contained within us. But also the same applies for our mothers and our fathers, and our mothers' mothers and our mothers' fathers, and so on down each lineage line or bloodline. So it's incredible, right? It's a miracle to really witness that. So it also is a great sense of empowerment, because once we know this, we know that we can transform any limiting belief that's been carried through our generations, right? So for me, my heritage is Irish American. And so many of the belief systems that were passed down were on scarcity, famish, right? Like the great potato famine, and that you have to work hard. And if you don't work hard, then you don't deserve. So you work as hard as you can for your life, even if it's for these small, tiny rations, right? But that keeps us in survival mode. So we all have these aspects of belief system and patterns, emotional patterns of giving and receiving love, mental patterns of what we think, how we think, when we think, and what is able to modulate our thinking, right? So that's the big picture. But how do we change that in our day-to-day interaction, right? So one of my favorite practical, accessible tips is to work with essential oils via inhalation. And I'll tell you why. So the right essential oils, and when I say essential oils, I mean the pure essential oil that comes from the aromatic plant, distilled. But the right essential oils in the right formulation, when we inhale them, for about 30 to 45 seconds, in particular with an intention. We want to activate a mindful practice, right? Because that allows our presence from our soul to our cells to be engaged, right? And so when we're inhaling this, because of the powerful connection between the olfactory system to the brain, but specifically the limbic and amygdala centers, we are able to modulate our feeling in the moment. So we can shift how we feel instantaneously because of that rapid connection with the brain and the nervous system. So think about that. Like, what a tool of empowerment that we can have at our fingertips at all the time, to notice when we start to feel triggered, right? Overwhelmed, anxious. Oh, I just got this email. I'm really activated. I'm nervous, or I'm anxious, or I'm angry, right? And then how that changes our day when we feel down or anxious or scattered, or any of these aspects of especially being isolated, separate, and alone. So when we inhale these essential oils, we can literally not only move, shift, elevate, transform how we feel in the moment, but the more that we use them with healthy habit practices, we can then shift the trajectory of our emotional response, right? And that becomes a real game changer in life.
So what scent is that?
This one is one that I keep at my desk. I'm at my office right now, and this is the Elixirs for Quantum Living Energy Elixir. So it has essential oils like black pepper, which activates beta brain waves, right? Well, beta brain waves lend to focus, memory, mental acuity, mental alertness. So by inhaling this throughout the day, I'm able to move through every moment where I feel either, gosh, I'd really like to go take a nap right now. Oh, but it's the middle of the day and I've got 3 more meetings, 2 more interviews, and something to write for a media outlet, right? Because we all have those things that commitments is responsibilities that we have throughout the day. So this one is from one of my latest collections, and it's the first essential oil collections to have formulas that are nanoparticleized. So nanoparticle essential oils, I know it's really exciting, which of course work more quickly, they're more efficacious, you need less of them, right? Less of the product to be more effective. And then it's also has nanoparticle CBD and gem and flower essences. So it really is a quantum plant medicine. But there's one for energy, there's one for mood, right? Especially for times where we do feel anxious, where we do feel low, where we do feel overwhelmed. And I don't know about you, but I can modulate, go through all of those emotions in, less than 5 minutes.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Like 2 seconds sometimes.
Yeah.
So let me see if I understand. So if the essential oil, when you take time to actually inhale, it brings you into the present moment.
It brings you into the present moment, but it also activates the brain.
Okay.
Because the sense of smell is directly linked to the limbic system. And the limbic system regulates so much of our physiology, but specifically mood, memory, and emotion.
Okay.
So when we're inhaling, and I have a lot of students that will use these formulas and use them before studying. Because when you inhale it before studying, then you do your work, your study, etc. At the end, you inhale it again, because what you're doing is opening and then closing a new memory cell in the brain. And because the limbic center is a lock and key, when you want to access that information or that energy, we use it a lot in meditation and healing practices as well. You simply smell that same aroma, right?
Okay.
Just like you probably have maybe a favorite aroma from childhood.
Yes.
Maybe it's fresh cut grass. Maybe it's a pumpkin pie, the holidays. Immediately you're brought back to that moment. It's powerful.
Okay. Yeah, I never thought of actually using that that sense, like smell, as a reference point to help boost boost.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Just
That's pretty brilliant, actually. Yeah.
It really is. And if you look at studies now, especially in regards to neuroplasticity, in regards to physiological response using essential oils via inhalation, you can see a lot of benefits that, of course, we've known for many, many years as aromatherapists and healers, but more and more science is coming out here in the US. Now, in other parts of Europe, these essential oils have been used from a medicinal perspective for hundreds of years. And even I like to collect older medical texts from the late 1800s, early 1900s. I'm kind of nerdy in that way about books. I love them. But when you refer to these older texts, you see that the materia medicas are predominantly plant-based. Right? These were the medicines that we used historically to address not just our bodies, but our minds, our spirits, our emotions as well. And I think that's part of this coming back into communion with nature, because we know what happens when we spend too much time on this, right? It doesn't feel good.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And when we spend too much time in front of the computer in the office and we're not out moving our bodies, we're not out getting sunlight, we're not out spending time in the forest, right? Or in our gardens, even if our gardens are very small container gardens, we can still plant and nurture and grow something that is going to then nourish us and nurture us on so many different levels.
So what about people that want an in-person event to continue this journey?
So I think this year in particular, because we are all clamoring and craving to get out and get back into community, to be in sacred community with one another, whether it's small potlucks or other in-person events. I have 2 wonderful retreats that are planned for this year. One is in the south of France. It's our 2nd annual in southern France for the fall equinox. So that's coming up, but we do have some space left. And we'll be following the footsteps of Mary Magdalene in these very ancient, mystical, sacred lands where I'll be doing meditations and ceremony with the oils and the crystals to activate us in deeper ways of allowing and inviting our divine feminine to rise right within us, to be more empowered, to open to deeper levels of our creativity,
Uh-huh.
right? Our intuition, our flow state, and the communion of sisterhood that we all crave, that we all long for when we come together in authenticity and vulnerability, we heal and transform.
So Adora, do you work primarily with women?
I would say I work primarily with women, absolutely, yes. Although all of the events and even many of our readers are men,
Mhm.
because as women, we give birth to men, we raise them, we nurture them. It happens that my own particular healing journey with the disease process of endometriosis really brought the focus point of my work to be with women
Mhm.
and to empower women, especially from a past of experience, dysfunctional, abusive relationships, in ways that I had to rise within myself to transform my life. It's a really deep passion of mine to support other women in their journey of rising as well.
Mhm, mhm. I asked because you mentioned the divine feminine. I know that that might scare off some men, like, what in the heck is going
Well, it's so interesting because one of the first individuals to sign up for the France retreat this year was a gentleman. And I have a lot of gentlemen that come to either the divine feminine meditations that I do, because I do complimentary free meditations monthly and weekly. And many men do come because the truth is we all have a feminine aspect and a masculine aspect. And when we can heal them and transform them and bring them together in unity,
Right, yeah,
so
yeah.
much opens up for us in life.
Mhm, mhm. And where can we learn more about healing and transformation?
Sure. So you can certainly visit my website, adorawinquist.com, and join our new quantum community. We have a really beautiful, it's called the Adora Quantum Community. And even though my name is Adora, my birth name isn't. So it's not about me as the individual, but the name Adora, universally, Italian and Spanish, with Latin roots, means adoration and honoring and beloved one. And so this community that we are co-creating and some of the programs like the Adora frequency that are coming from it is all about coming back into the remembrance of adoring and honoring ourselves as the beloved one, right? And this allows us to release all of those past patterns and energies of heartache and heartbreak and come into our heart center as our true north, as our true point of not only creation, but command, right? Where we can co-create a life beyond limitation for ourselves.
Mm,
So
that's
we
amazing.
have a really beautiful alchemy library in the quantum community. You can sign up and you get a wonderful free ebook. And then the quantum community has the library where we have insights and intervention and wisdom and knowledge in 4 parts: meditation alchemy, essential oil alchemy, crystal alchemy, and practical alchemy. And so through this, there are a few different tiers that you can subscribe to. There's also a free library for all seekers where you can come and get these practical recipes that you can make at home, that you can also listen to the meditations to heal and transform and awaken and empower yourself. And all of the wonderful alchemy from the essential oils and from the crystals to be able to start using at your home, at your desk. This is kyanite. This is wonderful for communication, right?
Hmm.
And being able to come into deeper authenticity and strength and grace and expression with who we really are.
Mm. So I mean, I love all of this. I just have one final question because I can kind of hear people like the resistance. When people, you mention crystals and all this, and they think woo wooey, fantasy type of stuff. Like, what do you say to people that have this resistance toward energy and healing?
I love this, especially about crystals. And I was writing a piece the other day, maybe it was for Healthline, which is a very mainstream
Yeah.
publication, and they're talking a lot about crystals. A lot of these mainstream publications now are getting kind of on this thought leadership, if you will, because if we really look at crystals, and this is so cool, like imagine a quartz crystal. I don't know if I have any right here, but quartz, I think this actually comes from a piece of quartz.
Mm-hmm.
And so quartz you can find in your computers, you can find it in your watches, you can find it in military communication devices. Why? Because it's an incredible conductor and transmitter of energy, right? So if we just think, shift our perspective and think about this for a moment, it's like, oh, well, gee, I have a crystal on my arm, in my watch, or on my computer, or all of these different facets that I never knew that the crystals were used from a scientific perspective, because of their incredible ability to transmit and conduct energy.
Mm.
So if we think about that and we think about all of the gifts that were put upon the earth to offer us benevolence, to offer us healing, to offer us the ability to come into deeper communion with nature and through nature ourselves, right? Then we see crystals everywhere. We see these plants and plant medicines everywhere. And even from the perspective of essential oils, like essential oils are the most potent form of plant medicine. And if we do the research and we start looking back into these ancient texts and a lot of the up and coming scientific studies, we see, wow, this really isn't so woo-woo after all.
Mhm.
Maybe this has been a resource available to us all along, and we've simply been distracted along the way.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much for that. That's a great message that we already use these crystals in so many ways we're not even aware of. So yeah, that's wonderful. Adora, this has been a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Such my pleasure, Ebony. You're a
And we're going to,
delightful host.
thank you. We're going to say goodbye, but I'm just going to chat with you for one moment.